Okay, well, interesting. The scientific method. Yeah, I believe it does exist, and one reason is because here's just my a quick history for me in this. Okay, I love science. I wanted to figure out philosophy from science, so I drew out this what I thought the scientific method was roughly, you know, and then later on I discovered, oh wait, there was a philosophical tradition. The method I had abstracted from science actually got from skeptical philosophers. So the scientific method is the skeptic's method of accepting evidence, and it's all about which evidence is good and which evidence is bad, and there's various heuristics and nothing absolute about necessarily which aesthetics they choose. However, they are very useful aesthetics, and it makes sense in the end why they're useful when you think about what use means and how the knowledge is generated. So the general skeptical method I like to put, in my own terms, technically in terms of extension and intention and extensional analysis. And the idea is basically this: we are bodies, right? So we are thinking about things that we experience. Okay, so we have a stream of experiences. That's something we're given from the fact that we start out as human bodies. Okay, so we don't have to start explaining that. We can explain it further, but we get this stream of perceptions. We also get an ability to process them innate to us somehow. For example, we have pattern recognition software. The brain is some sort of a pattern recognition machine. Perhaps that's all that it is, but whatever. It definitely recognizes patterns. So some of the perceptions that come along are naturally identified as a pattern. And how do we get the knowledge of the pattern? Well, that comes as a perception too. And so that's why we have to remember when I say perceptions, it's not just sense perceptions, it's also, imaginary perceptions. Of course, they should all trace back. If I'm a materialist, I'll think they should all trace back to perceptions. They could, for example, the perception of a pattern. So by the time we start thinking about science, we already have identified things in a pattern as similar in a group. If we're going to study apples scientifically, we've already got a group of apples that we've just noticed naturally through our pattern recognition software. We don't trust that 100%. We know that software is not always, accurate. It doesn't always work perfectly. But we do start out with that set. Or it can be the set of falling objects. Okay, and we're going to study falling objects and come up with the idea of gravitation. Hold on a moment. Okay, so what happens is we study these extensions and we come up with patterns about the patterns and these other ideas. Now, if we had to have total faith in our pattern recognition machinery, we'd be screwed. We couldn't change the extension. But how it really works is when we start coming up with these intentional descriptions. So these are the scientific theories, the things that we are using to describe abstractly the extension. Okay, then actually I should describe that. So, for just a simple example, coyote, the term coyote. The extension of the word coyote is all the coyotes that are out there in the world, the particular coyotes and a group of them. The intention is a description of coyotes. Like, let's say you see an animal walking by and you've never seen a coyote or any animal, and you want to know what kind of animal it is. So you're reading a definition of how to recognize a coyote. That's more the intentional, the dictionary definition of the word. So the skeptical process is that you start with these extensions, you create intentions. As you become convinced about the intentions, sometimes because you can get a similar intention from analyzing another group, and you start to say, wait, these shouldn't just be similar, these should be the same thing. And as you get confidence, the intentions actually somehow help program the recognition software. They somehow configure the recognition software. What you will recognize as belonging in a particular category becomes affected by your intention. Now, why is this working? Why does this keep working? Well, remember, we're all starting from perceptions, and we're finding patterns that really exist in perceptions, and then we're looking for patterns in patterns, taking differences. Let me tell you, for example, differences. When you're doing image processing and you're looking for differences, let's say you have a star field and you're looking for things that are moving because they're planets. You want to see things that are moving. The stars will all be fixed for the period that, over 2 years, let's say, or a year or whatever it was that you took the two pictures. Well, if you look at the two pictures, it's very hard to see the thing that was moving when there's thousands of dots in it. One of the tricks you can do, though, is you take the two images and you subtract one from the other. All the things that don't move, they disappear. The thing that moved becomes a black spot wherever it was in the subtracted image, and a bright spot in the place where it is in the image you're subtracting from. And this is the kind of thing we do comparing these groups. We get intensions from one definition, we get a similar intention from another definition. By comparing these two intentions and subtracting the differences, we find out why there were differences. In doing that, we learn more about those particular extensions, why their intentions were different, why it was a special case. And we also learn how to make more reusable abstractions, and we can create a higher level abstraction that puts those two similar intentions in a category as well. So for example, we know we can study the movement of water and get an idea of water squirting and moving. We can study pool balls and get an idea of pool balls bumping, and notice, wait, those are similar. There's this cause and effect idea, and then we get an idea of cause and effect that abstracts all of those sorts of things. Okay, that's just the skeptical method, going back and forth, starting with an extension, developing intentions, which then affect how you build the extension, which allows you to perfect your intentions, and getting cleaner and cleaner systems of ideas working like this. The scientific method really is just a method that adds on top of that some things. Okay, so first of all, when you create a category, you have to use a certain kind of perception. You can't just use any perception, right? So in the empirical method, you could use that to figure out who you love. You know, you have three people and you think you might love them because they're just all in love with you, and you're trying to figure out which one you love more, and you can use that method, but that wouldn't be scientific. Why? Because the perceptions can't be of something like love that can't be measured. You have to be able to measure it, and to measure it means you have to have a standard of measure. So it means that you have to be able to create an object, and this is where objectivism comes about, where the world is subjective. What do we mean when we create an objective measure? Well, it means we actually have an object that we're using as a standard.